All right, so today I want to talk about glitches in the matrix, how awkwardness in the biblical text points to underlying narratives. Glitches in the Matrix is a reference to the movie The Matrix. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. It's one of my all-time favorites. I can't believe some people haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, get out there and watch it. All right, so I'm going to start off here with Amos 6. And it says, "Woe to those who are at ease in Zion." And so this is awkward because it's a prophecy against southern Judah, or in this case Jerusalem. And the prophet Amos was prophesied against northern Israel. So why is that? In a previous video, I talk about how Amos was originally a prophet who prophesied against Jerusalem. So if you haven't seen that video, be sure to check it out. It's called Reconstructing the Missing Biblical Text, Examples from Amos. But today I want to focus on Genesis 3 and 4. And Genesis 3:15 says, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." So the awkwardness here is that women don't have seed. So this doesn't work because metaphorically it's just not correct. Typically, speaking of metaphorical seed, the men have the seed and the women have the soil that you plant the seed in. So metaphorically, it's odd. Secondly, it's not typically used that way in the Bible. There is one other place that does use it that way. It's in Genesis 16:10. It says, "And the angel of the Lord said unto her," which is Hagar, "I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude." So here again, you have seed in reference to a female. And why would the biblical author want to do that here? Well, because Ishmael, which is Hagar's son, the biblical author didn't want Ishmael to be Abraham's son, right? So remember, Isaac is Abraham's only son. And so the biblical author here is trying to put some distance between Ishmael and Abraham. So we can see that the use of this phrase here is used when for fatherless descendants. So why would the biblical author use that phrase in Genesis 3 in reference to Eve's descendant? We'll come back to that question a little bit, but the third awkwardness here is there's no payoff in the narrative. It sets up this enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of Eve. And there's really no payoff of that. You're expecting something to happen between them in the narrative. But there's nothing that really happens. And that's why people feel comfortable injecting Jesus and Satan into that portion of the narrative. Some people think it's a dispute between the line of Seth and the line of Cain. But that's not in the text, and I think that's speculative. So what would the traditional interpretation say? Well, for the most part, it would say there is enmity between Eve's descendants and snakes. Now, again, like I said earlier, some people like to inject Jesus and Satan into this part here. So it's a enmity between them. But that's really eisegesis. That's not in the text. People have to read that into the narrative. And so I think the original intent, the author wanted it to be between Eve's descendants and snakes. But it doesn't really make any sense because, well, snakes have enmity between humans and them and pretty much any other animal, okay? They're just dangerous creatures. So obviously there would be enmity. And humans have enmity between themselves and lions. So as a explanation as why there is this conflict between humans and snakes, it kind of falls short, and it's kind of awkward. So why is this traditional interpretation? Why is this a traditional interpretation? Well, because the context supports it, and I agree with that. But it doesn't remove the awkwardness. So let's take a look at a reconstructive reading interpretation. And here's what it would say. Here's my reconstruction. It says the biblical author was changing a previous narrative. Okay, and that narrative said Eve got a literal seed from the tree of life, planted it, grew a man, whom she named Cain, who had enmity with Abel, who she bore later. Now, I know that's a lot to chew on right there. So if you haven't checked out my previous video, my analysis of Genesis 3, be sure to check that out. I will put the link to it in the description. So this understanding, it allows for the context of the Bible, and it explains the awkwardness. Because that seed was Eve's seed. There was no father. All right, so reconstructive reading, or traditional interpretation, it gets you the sprinkles and maybe the cherry. But a reconstructive reading, it gets you the ice cream, the banana, the fudge, the sprinkles, and the cherry on top. So I stole that analogy from The Big Short. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen that movie, you should watch that one too. All right, and here's one more. From Genesis 4:1. It says, now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And that's an awkward phrase too, because usually you would expect her to say something, I have bore a son, or I have bore a child. But here, it's gotten a man. But again, it makes sense with the reconstructed narrative. She got the man because she got it from the tree of life. She planted it, and it grew as a man. So there was no child. So reconstructive reading makes the most amount of sense out of the most amount of text. And if there is one thing that you get from this video today, please, 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 at least watch The Matrix and The Big Short. All right, have a great day. Thanks for watching.